So, hello everyone. So, we're going to talk about today central heating. All right. So, what we're going to do is this is lesson 1. So, this is central heating, unvented heating. All right. So, sort of the very first sort of central heating systems that I've been involved with. There's probably some going back way back, but this is the ones that I've had to deal with. Okay. So, we're going to talk about open vented systems. All right. So, these ones. We're going to talk about gravity, all right, and we're going to talk about one pipe, and then in later lessons we'll talk about some other stuff. So open vented systems. So this is an open vented system. So we have our radiators down here. So these are our radiators, all right, which we have around our house. This here is our hot water cylinder. So that there is our hot water cylinder, and this here, these pipes here are what we call open vented. So this is the vent pipe. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll draw that for you. So to make it bigger, so we have our tank in the loft like this. All right, we then have, obviously that is filled with water. We then have our vent pipe, which comes up and over like that. So that there, that way, that's connected to our central heating. All right. So what happens is, say the water gets really, really hot. Say the water gets really, really hot, for some reason. What happens is, as water expands, the water will then come up and over and squirt into there. Obviously, that will then heat this tank up. The tank will eventually then get really hot, which obviously is a problem. So what you need to make sure, if you have this type of system, you need to make sure you got your joists in the loft up like this. All right, like this, yeah. All right. What you need to make sure is that there is supported. So it's supported all the way through. If it's not supported, this is what can happen here. Look, if I show you what can happen. Oh, let me redo that bit. So what can happen if it's not supported is this. So say I just have my joists like this. So this is my joists. And I'm pretty sure people have been hurt through this. I remember reading an article of a young baby in the UK being hurt by this. So what will happen is the tank will start to sag like this because it's getting really hot. And eventually what will happen is it will split and the water will start to come out. So all this water will start to come out. So you need to make sure that it's supported all the way through. All right. So that's what we call an open vented system. So that's open to atmosphere. So it's open to the environment. Okay. So let's get rid of that. Okay. So let me redraw that. So we have our tank. It's filled with water. We then have our vent pipe that comes up and down, which then goes to our cylinder. All right, so we then got our cylinder about here, look. Oh, water cylinder like that. Okay, so effectively that's what we've got. What we need to make sure is that there are no valves. Oh, let's go back. That there are no valves here. So here, no valves. Really, really important that there's no valves there, because you need to make sure that if the water wants to expand, if the water gets hot, if this water starts to get hot, it needs to go up there. If you put a valve in here, say I put like some sort of valve in here, then the water can't go anywhere, and that's when you could got an explode. That's when it can go bang, because now you're pressurizing the system. So you need it open to atmosphere. So you need to make sure that there are no valves. Okay, so there are no valves. So the hot water, the water that gets hot, can expand up the pipe. All right. So let's talk about the pros and cons. All right. As always, there's pros for something that's good about it, and something that's not good about it. All right. So the pros are the fact that there are no valves. So there are no like 3-port valves, 2-port valves. There are no electrical controls on it. So, and all these things go wrong. So there's less to go wrong with it. So they're simple. Again, no pumps to seize. Again, pumps seize up, especially if they've not been used for a long while. If you go away for a couple of weeks on holiday, come back, it's not been used, and all of a sudden the pump won't work. Stored water. We've got stored water up in the loft, whether that's our open vent for our F&E tank, which I just spoke about, or on the hot water side, which we'll talk about when we talk about hot water. There's also stored water, which isn't so much a problem today because our water doesn't get cut off very much. But back in the day, that used to happen quite a lot. Maybe my nan and granddad would tell me that. The cons are no temperature controls. So, the hot water gets extremely hot. Extremely hot. You wouldn't want your kids running a bath. Uses a lot of energy. A huge amount of energy, because there's no control. It just heats and heats and heats until you turn it off. Tanks in a loft, again, that's sort of an advantage and a disadvantage. If you want to convert your loft or store stuff on your loft, you obviously got tanks in the way. And like I said, the hot water gets really, really, really hot. All right. So what we're going to talk about now, one-pipe systems. So what are one-pipe systems? So one-pipe systems are basically you just have one pipe. So say, for example, we've got our pipe work. So our flow coming from our boiler. So it's going that way, right? So it's coming from our boiler. It goes off, in, out, and then it goes back, in, and out, like that. So it goes up, down. So as you can see, this is effectively what happens. And then it just goes back to the boiler. Okay, so pros of this, a lot less pipe work. We don't have to have double the amount of pipe work, which copper is really expensive, which is, even plastic pipe is really expensive. So less fittings, less pipe work is always good. Cons, say for example, let me give you an example. Say for some reason, there's a blockage right here. If there's a blockage right there, these radiators won't get hot. So because there's no flow. So the flow's trying to go past, but it can't. So it's stopped there. It can't go. So they just won't get hot. All right. So that's one of the big things. Also, we need to balance them, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Okay. So let's look at the modern day 2-pipe system. So 2-pipe system, we have our flow. And then we have our return. Okay, so our flow goes off and into the radiator and goes into this radiator. So this is our flow. Okay, so red is flow. All right, if you're ever doing these, always label your pipes up. I always have like red and blue sticky tape on with me, all right, to label them up. And then what we have, our return comes back and goes that way. Heads that way, goes out and in. Oh, wrong way. Silly. That way. Yeah. All right. And I'll get rid of I'll get rid of this as well. We don't need that. Obviously, if you're adding more radiators, you would just obviously extend it. So, like you say, so blue is return. So as you can see, so disadvantage of this, you've got more pipework. More pipework is never good because obviously it's more expensive. But the advantage of this, it's more efficient. If there's any blockages, say there's a blockage in this pipe. If I block up this pipe, you know, here. So I block up this pipe here. This radiator here will be cold. But this radiator over here will be warm. So it'll only affect one radiator. All right. So let's go into more detail about what a one pipe system is. So let me show you what a one pipe system is in more detail, and then we'll go through a two pipe system and why we install two pipe systems now and not one pipe systems. So again, so we've got our flow, and then what we'll have is our return in a minute, which I will talk about. So one pipe system goes along like that, goes in and down. Okay, so say this is, say, 80 degrees. So this is 80 degrees. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, guys, but there we go. And then that comes out, and say this is, say, 70 degrees. Okay? And then this one is 60 degrees. And then this one is 50 degrees. And then this one is 40 degrees. So as you can see, the temperature keeps going down, 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 and down. Oh, there you go. Look. Okay, so the temperature keeps going down and down. So the further away it is, so if this is like the furthest point, the radiator will be colder. So what you need to do is balance them. So you turn this radiator down, say turn this one down, and turn this one up. So it balances the system, which is very tricky to do, but is possible. All right, so that's what effectively happens with this type of system. So now let's talk about why. So what happens with a two-pipe system, which is what we use now. So we have, again, so we have our flow going across here. We then have our return. Okay, so that's our return. So our goes in there, goes in there, goes in there, goes in there, and goes in there. So this is our flow. And then we have our return. Okay, so our return. Our return. And our return. So now what we would have, if we were going to heat these, so we would have, say 60 degrees, 60 degrees, 60 degrees, 60 degrees, and 60 degrees. Okay, because they're now balanced. Because as soon as the heat, so if I do an example, so the heat comes up, fills this radiator up, and then when it's cooled down, it will then go back to get reheated. And then more heat goes this way, back up, fills this radiator up. Oh, I haven't drawn one in there. And then goes back, down the return, and back to the boiler. Okay, so you can see it's like smaller circles. All right, so you can see that it's a little bit more efficient, or actually a lot more efficient. Okay, so that's what we spoke about. All right, so what we're now going to talk about is gravity fed. Okay, so I'm going to bring up this again. Let me just get rid of all my drawings there. I'm going to show you what a gravity fed is. Okay, so a gravity fed is this. So I'll draw the tank. So we've got our hot water cylinder. We've got our boiler. So this is our boiler, and this is our hot water cylinder. So what we have, we've got, say we're going to do a 2-pipe system. So this is a 2-pipe system. So it goes off to my radiator. And then, oh, let me redo that again a minute. Sorry, let's do that. So what is gravity? We're going to talk about gravity fed. Okay, so gravity fed. So we have a boiler down here. So this is our boiler. Okay, we have our tank up here. Like this. And then we have our, so this is our cylinder, so hot water cylinder. This is our radiator up here. We'll just put one in. Okay, so we have our, there we go. So our flow goes off into the radiator, and our return comes back. So as you can see, there's no pumps, there's no valves. The boiler fires up. The boiler fires up, and then the heat. When the boiler fires up, the heat just naturally travels up. As we know, heat rises. All right, so when we boil heat water, it automatically rises to the top. So it rises up, gets to here, gets cold, so it cools down, and then starts to go back down. Because obviously, as we know, heat rises, so it means the cold water goes to the bottom. And so it then goes through the boiler, heats up, and then goes back up. Okay, so it's just a circle. So this is what we call gravity fed. So the hot water does exactly the same. Okay, so we have our flow, goes off into our tank, cools back down, and goes back into our boiler. So exactly the same principle. The water heats up, rises up, goes into our tank, heats the water up, it cools down, and then drops back to the boiler. So the biggest disadvantage of this is in the summer when I have my hot water on, because I still need hot water, some of the radiators might come on. And in the winter, when I put the radiators on, the hot water if I've got the heating on all day, this will constantly get hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. So you've got some extreme temperatures there. Okay, so this is what we call gravity fed. So gravity hot water, gravity central heating. All right. So guys, what we spoke about today was vented systems. So we have our vented system, which we spoke about. So we have our tank in our loft, and we have our open vent, which allows for expansion. We also spoke about 1-pipe systems. So we have our radiator, we have our flow going in, and it comes back, and it's the same pipe. Okay? And we also spoke about gravity, which, so if we have our boiler here, and our tank up here, and our radiator up here, the heat will naturally go up. The heat will rise. It will then cool back down, come back to the boiler. Okay, so this is gravity. So guys, like and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'll link it below. If you guys want any more information, anything like that, if you need any details, give me a shout.